Hello. So, welcome to the first episode of my new podcast. My name's Wayne. I feel a bit like I'm standing up in front of a room and, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm just like, yeah, so I've been autistic for 39 years. I've been aware of it for, a year and a half of that time. The rest of the time has been difficult. It's been really difficult. Um, so it's funny because I use this platform called Threads, and it's like a conversational platform. There's a lot of neurodivergent people on there. So if you've not been on there, go on there and find your people. You can literally tell the algorithm, bring the neurodivergent people to me, and it'll bring people to you. But I go on there quite a bit, and it's been amazing because I've been able to connect to so many different neurodivergent people, and it's really opened my eyes. I did that. I think I started on it January of last year, and it helped me so much because up until that point, and I feel like this is where a lot of our paths, even though all of our paths and all of our journeys are individual. So at no point during this am I going to say to you, do what I do. I'm just going to tell you what I did, and then you just take away whatever you want from it, or maybe it's an interesting story or whatever it may be. Because I don't want to tell anyone what to do, because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. I do think there are commonalities, and I do think we kind of sometimes hit the same checkpoints along the journey. And, at the end of the day, if I'm autistic and you're autistic, we will experience some of the same things. Nervous system dysregulation, difficulty to understand your emotions, social burnout, that sort of thing. We'll experience some of the same things, but it doesn't mean that our journey is the same, because everyone's journey is individual. So I use this platform of Threads, and what, me being me, I'll come across certain posts, and instead of like just putting a little message on there, I'll do a voice note. But it's only something that really interests or intrigues me, and I'll do a little voice note. And on Threads you can only do like 5 minute voice notes. So like, right, I've got to fit everything into 5 minutes. I've just got to solve this problem in 5 minutes. It's like, right, what do you think about this? This is the situation. I'm autistic, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be right, this is my experience, this is what, and I'll just do 5 minutes of it. And then the person, like a lot of the time, I wouldn't say a lot of the time, but some of the time, I've had these comments that say, you should do your own podcast. And I'm like, well, okay, but it just didn't feel right to me at the time. And to be honest, there was a part of me that was just like, am I really good enough to do a podcast? There are so many other people out there. There's so many podcasts about neurodivergency. There's so many podcasts about autism and ADHD and BPD and all the different, everything on the spectrum. There's so many different podcasts. It's like, why me? Why would I do a podcast? But, it's funny because in the end, I just thought, maybe I'm missing something in, because I am like, I'm sort of, I do write every day, and I write about my life, and I write, pages and pages and pages. I think in the last 2 weeks I've written like 150 pages. But there was another side to me, and it was the vocal side. Something that I didn't have for years. When I was younger, I didn't used to speak for most of the time. That's another story. But for the majority of my childhood, I was very shy, and I wouldn't speak to most adults. I would try, like, people would speak to me, and I literally just wouldn't say anything, because I'd learned that a lot of the time when I did speak, it was usually seen as wrong or inappropriate or awkward. So I just thought, well, what's the best way to solve that problem? Just don't speak. And because of that, I ended up being bullied a lot throughout school, throughout high school. And again, that may be something that you went through as well. But I was told, I was told to sort of, do this podcast. I was like, well, you'd be really great at it. And I was like, I don't know, I don't know if and I've spoken to other neurodivergent people as well. And I've been lucky enough since then, since Threads, I ended up meeting all of these amazing neurodivergent people. And I realized then it was like, there are people like me where I don't have to fight to be understood. There are people that just get me. You know what I mean? They just get me. They just understand me. They understand my sense of humor. They understand my energy. They understand my intention is good. They're not misunderstanding me and trying to fight me online. I mean, people still try to do that a little bit, but I kind of just set a boundary, just walk away now, because, I've learned boundaries. Way. But yeah, like, the right people. And this is something that I discovered on Threads, and it's something that I later discovered when I went out into the world, and because I built my confidence on Threads. Because at a certain point, for a long time after I was diagnosed, I would say for the year that followed, um, I became introspective, and probably quite isolated as well. So I just, because I got to that point, which I think a lot of us get to, where I was socially burnt out. I was like, you know what? It doesn't work with people in the real world. Most people don't understand me. It's too much fucking effort. Like so many people, I'm just struggling. Like everything just seems so difficult. Like like conversations, like I couldn't do small talk. I didn't understand the reason for small talk. Why are we talking about irrelevant, stupid shit? You know what I mean? Like, well, why are we talking about stuff that doesn't matter? Where's the deeper conversations? Where's the juicy stuff? Where's the good? Let's talk about something that's really interesting. But people didn't want to do that. So I was like, why am I'm not fitting in here. I'm just not fitting in the real world. So I had this period of, like I say, about a year when I just became very introspective. And one of the things at the time I had because I feel like I need to mention this because otherwise it'd be dishonest. So I had coping mechanisms. So one of the things I did is that I smoked weed all the time. And I told myself a lot of the things that people tell themselves, like, oh, but it helps with the pain and it helps me to feel normal. You probably heard that before. It relaxes me, and the thing is I was telling myself a story at the time, but at the end of the day, it was a coping mechanism. It was a crutch. When I eventually confronted it and the reasons why, I realized that predominantly I was not doing it for me. I was doing it to make myself palatable for the people around me. And once I realized that, I thought, why am I sacrificing my energy and the life that I really want for people that are just never really going to understand me? Like why am I editing myself? And it's the same with the masking, and I'm going out and I'm masking, I'm trying, but the thing is, when I'm masking, I can't feel my emotions. So I'm sort of burying how I feel in order to accommodate how other people feel and then respond to that. But I can't, when I do that, I voluntarily disconnect from everyone. Like not just neurotypicals, but everyone, every single person. Because it's funny, and I spoke about this with a friend of mine actually called Dee, and she has two autistic kids and an ADHD kid. And I said, it's funny, like if we're both masking, if I meet like a neurodivergent person out in the wild and we see each other from across the field and we look at each other, right? But we're both masking, so there's no emotion showing, and we're just, and say we walk past each other, we just nod. And we're both kind of doing what we think we should do. We're sort of performing, we're performing to the other one. We can't recognize each other because we're masking. So even though we're both neurodivergent, and if we didn't have the mask, we would understand each other and be like, oh my God, this is amazing, you're like me. But I don't know you're like me if you're pretending to be like someone else, because I can't see it. And this is the thing, is like learning to unmask. It's just like so fucking important. And it's something that I wasn't ready to do that in that year that I took. And like I said, I was smoking weed, and I was, like I've always had addictions. That's the thing. I've always like, even if like one point I was drinking lots of alcohol and I wasn't smoking weed, but then when I quit alcohol, I just segued into a different addiction. Then when I quit that, I segued into another addiction. I just swapped addictions. Now, the past 6 or 7 months, I've not done that. So I'm essentially living a sober lifestyle, and that is difficult as fuck because, like, within that, you have to do things that you don't want to do, like sitting with uncomfortable emotions. And again, I come back to Threads because there's so many people on there, and this is the thing, women mostly, who helped me with my emotions because I didn't understand like what I was feeling. I was like, I don't like, because I've never been taught this before. And the thing is, in society, men are taught to suppress their emotions. So no one ever explained to me. No, like say for example, if you start crying, I always assumed it was a horrible thing. I was, there was something wrong with me to cry. But the thing is, crying can be lethargic, it can be a release. No one ever taught me that. I had to learn that in the past year, later in life, once I was diagnosed and once I started talking to other neurodivergent people who would talk with me and explain these things. It's like, look, explain emotions to me like I'm a fucking child, because I don't understand. I just don't understand what's happening with me. Like, and I used to think, very naive, but I was never taught this. I used to think it was like 6 emotions, like happiness, sadness, anger, disappointment, joy. I just think there was 6 emotions, but there isn't. There's like hundreds of emotions. I didn't know that. And again, looking back on that, the way I'm saying it now, that sounds very naive, but you can't know what you don't know. I was never taught these things. No one ever sat me down and explained to me and said, look, did you know that you have all these different emotions and you're not just experiencing one emotion at a time, you can be experiencing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different emotions. And the reason that you're struggling to recognize what you're feeling is because it's not just one feeling. And not only that, the reason that some feelings are uncomfortable is because when you feel uncomfortable emotions in the past, the habit that you've got into is to go into your coping mechanism. So what you'll do is, say when you're feeling, sadness or grief or, or frustrate, whatever it may be, or you're struggling to process your anger or whatever it is, what I would do in the past is I would go on a binge eat. So I'd go for sugar basically, and I'd be like, right, let's just eat a load of Jaffa cakes and crisp and a load of shit, and yeah, that'll be a temporary high. And yeah, great, because you get that temporary high, but then you have to come down afterward. So it's not a long-term fix. It's a short-term coping mechanism. And, like me, you end up fat. So it's like, it doesn't, so then you feel even worse because you're like, fuck, why, when you look in the mirror, you're like, because you can see it, can't you? You can see the effect that it's having on you. So, to be able to develop healthy coping mechanisms, to be able to, it takes so much self-work. It takes so much self-work. The amount of work that I've done in the last year and a half is fucking monumental. It's ridiculous, and, I can't, and this is one of the reasons actually why I wanted to do a podcast, because I've done all of this work, right? And people have told me before, very complimentary towards the things that I've said, and they said, you know what, you have a way of breaking things down in such a way that makes it easily palatable to people who are like me, neurodivergent people, where they can understand it. Like, when I said before, explain it to me like I'm a baby. Now, I don't want to speak to people like they're a baby because it's disrespectful, because but at the same time, I feel like because I've been there and I've done all this research and the most important work for me, yes, the research is important and all that sort of thing, as a guideline, but the biggest lessons come from the understanding of myself. So meditation, which I do every single day, and you may be saying to yourself, oh, I can't do meditation, I just can't sit still. The thing is, right, is you're not born good at meditation. It doesn't work like that. So, a friend of mine, Andy, actually said, I thought I was failing at meditation because every time I put the earphones on, all these thoughts were going through my head. But it's like, you can't fail at meditation. If you put the earphones on and you put your music on and you go to the breathing, and all you hear are these thoughts going through, that's what's meant to happen. It can't fail. Like, that is your meditation. So you do that every day. It's a practice. You get consistent at it. Like, the whole thing is to build consistency. Like, you may hate it in the beginning, depending on you, maybe you think, because I'm failing, because I'm not doing it properly, I'm not doing it the way I'm supposed to do. But there is no supposed to do. Just like the same with life, there is no supposed to. There is no, you should do this, you should do that. There's no, like I said, if one thing works for one person, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. If someone says, well, this is the rules you've got to follow, this is the path if anyone says that to you, it's fucking bullshit. Because everyone is on an individual path, And it's funny as well because, a lot of the time we assume that progress is linear, like it's a diagonal line shooting upwards to the stars, and it's not. That's not how you progress. So the way that it happens, imagine a wave that's going up and going down and going up and going down and going up and going down. That's what it's like, because you have these moments of, like social burnout, uncomfortable emotions. You're not going to feel great during these, during those times. You're not going to feel good. You're going to feel like shit a lot of the time. So that's when it dips. But the thing is when you sit in that, when you sit in those uncomfortable, you say, right, okay, I feel uncomfortable. I don't like this. I don't want to be here. Then you get the choice, right? You can go away and find some cheap dopamine. It's, I'm going to go fucking chase some, I'm going to go do some, I'm going to drink, or I'm going to eat some shit, or I'm going to do whatever my coping mechanism is, or I'm going to scroll and try and get some dopamine that way, whatever. Now, every time you do that, you bypass the lesson. So you have to sit with the uncomfortable emotions and then wait until it passes. Because at the other side of that, and again, this is something I've discovered recently, is that on the other side of that, you get a reward. Because after you sit with the uncomfortable emotions, then it like boosts you up. And then you start to feel good again. Just give me a second, I'm just going to drink some water. Hydration is important. Anyway, so you get a boost after that. So I explained it like a bow and arrow. Imagine like pulling back the string, right? And that's the low point, isn't it? Say you're pointing the arrow upwards, you pull back the string, that's the low point, you feel like shit. You start questioning yourself, why do I feel like shit? I don't want to feel like shit, what's wrong, blah, blah, blah. But you don't have to do that. If you just sit with uncomfortable emotions and just say, right, okay, I don't feel great, this is uncomfortable, I don't like it, let's just sit with it, right? It passes much quicker if you accept it than when you fight it. Here's another thing that I remember listening to, I remember reading about, and it changed a lot for me. So most emotions, if not all emotions, last for a maximum of 90 seconds, right? 90 seconds. So imagine you're watching a movie, there's a really emotional part, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe, you're like, I can't believe that happened. You start crying. 90 seconds after that, it's gone, if you accept it. But if you fight it, so this is what I discovered, is that if you fight the emotion, what happens is you bounce it around in your conscious mind and it prolongs the emotion. So say, like if you're feeling frustrated and you start, then you start overthinking, don't you? So you're like, why am I frustrated? I don't fucking remember that. But because you're constantly thinking about the emotion in your head, it keeps the emotion going. Whereas if you just accepted it and said, okay, I'm frustrated, let's just sit with it, the frustration would pass. And it does sound really simple, but like, I'm not joking. Like, and it's not easy to calm an overthinking mind. That's part of the meditation. But there's also other things. I think journaling is huge as well. But and it takes time to, it's not something you can just yeah, it's done, I don't overthink anymore. It takes fucking years, mate. It takes years to overcome overthinking. And if someone says to you, I can give you a quick fix and how to just be silent in your mind and just experience peace, and it's like, no, you're talking shit, mate. Because all of these unconscious loops, and this is another thing I read as well, is that 5% of what goes on in your head every day is conscious and 95% is unconscious. 95% of the time, you're on autopilot. So when someone says to you, oh, I'm awakened, it's like fucking bullshit, mate. It doesn't work like that. You're not awakened all the time. No one is. And you can't function like that. Everyone is on autopilot for the majority of the time. That's just the way that people are built. That's the way that human beings are built. The thing is to break those unconscious loops. So when you're overthinking, it's an unconscious loop. It's something that you've always done. Well, it's something that you probably learned as a child. You were conditioned to think, and then you carried it on. And you've been doing this for like 20 years or however long you've been on, I don't know, just years and years, you've been doing it and you've never really stopped and interrupted that loop. Because, and this is the thing, so you can recalibrate your own brain, but to do that, right, you've got to consciously interrupt this unconscious loop. So I'm trying to think of an example. So say you have a problem with conflict. So this is something that someone mentioned to me the other day. Karen, her name is, and she has a problem. She's from America. She has a problem with communicating clearly when she's uncomfortable with people. And what she does is she just pretends like it's okay. Then she walks away and gets frustrated later. So she like when it happens, she can't process it. And then she walks away and she's like, oh, why did they do that? And I say to her, I say, Karen, did you communicate how you felt to the person? Did you say it was making you feel uncomfortable? Did you say, like, and she's like, no, I didn't. And it's like, well, how can they adjust their behavior if you don't communicate how they feel? Because no one's a mind reader. Now, the thing is, to do that, you have to, every time that you feel like uncomfortable, you have to switch on and consciously be like, I feel uncomfortable. And then you have to tell yourself to voice it, and the more that you do that, because the thing is, this is another thing they told me, is your brain always wants to switch back to what's familiar. So even if you consciously change a habit one day, your brain wants to go back to what you're used, because it's safety, isn't it? Because we feel safe in what's familiar. Even if the familiar thing is self-destructive, we still feel safer doing the self-destructive thing than we do the healthy thing. Because like even peace, to a person who's used to chaos, who grew up in chaos, as many of us did, I did, if you grow up in chaos, you get used to chaos. You get, like, it becomes familiar. We like what's familiar. We're habitual creatures. We like what we like. So in order to interrupt that, it becomes very difficult. We have to kind of force ourselves into this new routine, and in the beginning it feels extremely uncomfortable to us, even if we know it's the best thing for us, because like peace feels like boredom in the beginning, because you only talk about like meditation, for example. It's very difficult in the beginning to sit down and be like, right, I'm going to force myself, even if it's just do 10 minutes where I'm sitting still. Now, if you've got a nervous system that's fucking on fire, like your life is just all over the fucking place, that feels like the worst thing in the world. Sit still and just try and clear your mind. If it's the worst, it's like, oh my God, I fucking hate this. I fucking hate it. But the thing is, it takes, like I've estimated this in my own head, I think it takes about 500 times for you to do something before it switches into that familiarity autopilot mode. And that's just an estimation. Maybe it could take some people 300 times. Obviously, I'm just estimating. But like for me, I've been doing the meditation now for, it's well over a year. I think it's about 16 months, something like that. And it's only now got to the point where it feels weird to me not to meditate. Like I can feel it. It's like, I've not meditated today. I need to go do meditation. Because now it's become something that I like doing. Now it's become something I rely on. Now it's become something that's familiar. But it wasn't like that for the first fucking 8-10 months, because a lot of the time, for 95% of the time, I had to force myself to do it. And you think, well, why would you do that? Because long term, it's better for me. Because I asked myself the question, it was always like, so the question was, when you do the meditation, do you feel better after it? And every single time I answered that question, the answer was yes. So I was like, right. So if every time you do the meditation, you feel better, it's beneficial for you, short term and long term, isn't it? Yes, it is. Okay, so keep doing it. Even if you don't want to do it, keep doing it because it's beneficial. The same with a lot of things. You talk about being in service to the future you. Now, it's like, I would always say, like, as much as humanly possible, try to remain in the present moment, because the more that we go into the future or the past, what you call time traveling, it drains energy. So you think just worrying about the future all the time, the assumption is that, well, I'm not actually moving my physical body, so that shouldn't take energy, but it does. It takes mental energy. So when you go into the future and worry about loads of different shit, it's like that's draining energy out of you. So even though you might be sat there doing nothing, you'll still feel exhausted because you're time traveling in your head. The same when you go to the past. Oh, I'm really embarrassed about what happened, that happened, and you think back to years ago, that relationship that I had, it all went wrong, and it was all my fault, and blah 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 blah. The past is done. The past is done, and if it didn't work out, it wasn't meant to. So you can let that go. Now, the process of letting go and actually getting to that point is very difficult. It takes time, like with everything. Like I said, 300, 500 times. It takes time to, and I still ruminate over the past sometimes. I just don't do it as much as what I did before, because that's the thing with progress. You're not going from like 0 progress to 100% progress in the space of, it doesn't work like that. So, say in January, I did something, say with the meditation, I started off doing it twice a week. And then say by March, I do it 3 times a week. And then say by May, I did it 5 times a week, and so on, because you're not in competition against anyone but yourself. That's the thing. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, competition, it's, you don't want to, it's not about winning. Like for me, I personally disagree. Now, whether there's a difference between men and women there, I don't know. But for me personally, I like winning when I'm in competition against myself. Now, there's no like, but at the same time, I'm not like a loser. You know what I mean? So by saying that, I mean, I don't like beat myself up over my head for what I perceive to be failures. All I try to do is progress on who I was a week before or a month before, but like I said, I'm not like, oh, you fucking shit, Wayne, you should have done this and you should have done, I don't do that. I don't beat myself over the head. I used to call it the whip, when you would whip yourself, and it's like a self-punishment thing. It's like, I don't do that, but I'm in a healthy competition with myself. Even if I don't achieve what I potentially set out to do, I still feel good because I put effort in and I know I did my best. And it's the same, like if I'm actually playing in real life, playing a physical, like I used to be really competitive. Like say if I was playing pool or something, I had to win. I'm not like that anymore. Like now, if I play a game of pool with someone and I lose, I just say, good game, I really enjoyed that. Because it's not about the outcome a lot of the time. It's about the journey. Like if you have fun along the, like I tried to achieve something. It didn't come off how I thought it would, but I still enjoyed the process of, and that's what it's all about, because you've got to enjoy, like you can't just look into the future and say, right, well, I'll be happy when this thing happens. I'll be happy when I achieve this. I'll be happy, because that's a point in the future that more than likely you're never going to get to. It's not to say you won't get the things that you want, but you're always, even if you get to close to, you'll shift the goalpost and push it back more. So then you'll have to keep going, and then you'll just shift it again. It's, oh, well, it's not quite how I thought it would be, so I'm going to I want this now, and that's the more mentality, and that is a fucking black hole. People talk about, oh yeah, billionaires must be really happy. Are they? Fuck. Because it's nothing's enough. Nothing's ever enough for them. They just need more and more and more. They're never satisfied. And that's the thing. Satisfaction, mate. Satisfaction is an underrated feeling. To be satisfied, to be at the point where you've earned something and you're satisfied, like a job well done. When you do something, you think it's a job well done, you're satisfied, whether it's the end of the day or partway through the day or whatever. Satisfaction is so underrated. A lot of people chase happiness. Happiness is a temporary emotion. Like in the same category that 90-second emotions are. So how can you chase a 90-second emotion? You know what I mean? But satisfaction lasts a lot longer than 90 seconds, because that's a feeling that you carry with you. But happiness is unsustainable over a long period. but but the feeling of peace, the feeling of satisfaction, the feeling of I'm okay, the feeling of I'm safe, the feeling of I feel relaxed, those things last. Those things are sustainable, and you can carry them with you throughout the days and throughout the weeks. It doesn't mean that every single day is going to be a relaxed, safety, satisfaction day. But the thing is you're not chasing something that's unattainable anymore. And there are things that you can do. There's a list of things that I personally believe that contribute to your general satisfaction, your feelings. Like for me, is like exercise is high up there. Going in nature for me, I think is a huge thing. I'm outside probably 3 hours a day at least, maybe 4. Eating good food, eating healthy food, your fruit, your veg. If you don't eat meat, that's fine. But yeah, definitely, eating things that are healthy for you. Meditation, journaling, as I've mentioned. For me, reading as well. I love reading. I think that because it's slow release dopamine. So it's not, like when you're scrolling on threads, it's fast release dopamine, and that gets you into like an addictive mindset. So if you do that for like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, apparently the average person is on the phone for at least 6 hours a day. And if you doom scrolling for that much time, you're an addict. So, and your mind will be chaos because you're always chasing the dopamine. You know what I mean? It's like a crack addict. It's just always looking for the next hit. So yeah, slow release dopamine is absolutely essential for me anyway. But yeah, I think I've covered quite a bit there actually. I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted to talk about. So the way it works for me is, and maybe this is the way it works for you, maybe it isn't, but I'll have a thought process that will come through. And sometimes I do switch around a lot. So I realized that the general topic of this conversation didn't necessarily, because that's the thing, when I was creating this, they said, oh, stick to a plan, stick to a topic and all that. But I don't really work like that. I'm not going to force myself into okay, everyone else does this, so that's what I'm going to do. Because what I do is I go towards what excites me. I go towards where my emotions are. Now, if I try to force myself to stay inside a single topic throughout the entire episode, it's not going to work. Because when I get into like a flow state, as I call it, and you may have experienced this flow state for yourself, doing, a lot of the time it's creative, it's artistic, it's whatever you do art, whether you do writing, whether you do music, create music, whatever it is, you get yourself into this flow state, and it's like it naturally flows through you, whatever the art form is, whatever the creative, whatever you want to call it, the muse from high above, where it just flows through you. Now, if I was to try and control that and try to push it in a direction where I wanted it to go, it would stop and stutter, and it wouldn't sound natural. And that's the thing. What was it? There was so 7% of language is verbal. 93% is body language and tone, right? And when you talk about like liars, so when people lie, when people manipulate, it's very difficult to lie and for your body language and tone to kind of when you compare someone who's being genuine, I believe that you can feel it. You can like it's just like it resonates, you know what I mean? You're like, yeah, I fucking feel this, mate. Like I feel like this is real. This is the truth. Like it's not bullshit, you know what I mean? And people who manipulate, there's always, it feels a bit off. Your intuition is like, this doesn't quite feel right to me. And intuition, again, is such an underrated thing. And it's something I've worked on for so long. And I still don't get it right, but I do sometimes. Those one-off amazing opportunities, those amazing times when I do, I'm tuned into my intuition and I can follow the thread, so to speak. But intuition is so underrated, but we all have it. And it's that feeling that when you're listening to something or when someone's talking to you and you just know something is real because like it feeds you, you know what I mean? And this is the thing about social interaction that I had to learn later on, you know, when I started going back into the world, and that is that if we mask, if we try to fit in with people that we're not meant to fit into, it drains the fuck out of us. But and that's an experience that a lot of people would have. A lot of people can tell you that. A lot of people can say, "Oh, I'm exhausted. Fucking so, people exhaust me. People are shit, etc." Now, a lot of people will say that, but there's another side to it that a lot of people don't say because they've not discovered it. Now, the other side to that is creating energy. Because there's always opposites, isn't there? The two extremes. The one extreme is like, well, I suppose narcissism, where you sort of sat there and someone's just monologuing at you and just unloading all the shit and all the pain that they feel, and you're just sat there in silence, just taking it all, and your energy's being drained. You're like, get me out of here. That's probably one end of the extreme. But the other end of the extreme, which you can have with someone that understands you a lot of the time, like with me, it's other neurodivergents, right? So another end of the extreme is when you have someone opposite you, usually neurodivergent, someone opposite you that is in service to you. So you're in service to them and they're in service to you. That doesn't mean like you're a servant. It doesn't mean that you're doing everything. But what it is you want that person to be happy, right? They want you to be happy. Now, I know we talked about happy being, well, let's just say, to rephrase, they have your best interests at heart. And you have their best interests at heart, right? So you're both freely giving energy. You're not taking it. A narcissist would take, right? But two people who care about each other freely give their energy to each other. And when that happens, in the middle of it, you create energy. So like when you see this like happen in real life, it's the reason that you can go out and socialize with one group of person and be at your fucking wit's end after an hour and say, I'm tired and need to go home. But then you can go out with another group of people, or even it's more likely that say you have one person or two people who you're really close to, and you go out with them, and all of a sudden you don't want the night to end because it's just so fucking interesting. Like, these are the in-depth conversations that I was craving. These are the things that I really want to talk about. These are the things that are interesting. These are the things that are exciting me. When you get that, you create energy. It doesn't drain you. So, you know, and that's not to say that you won't still have a limit, you know, but you'll go for hours and hours and hours and think, this is the best night I've ever fucking. But then at the end of it, when it's over, you'll be like, right, fucking amazing night. Let's regroup and we'll do it another time. You know, so that's where the satisfaction comes in, because it's like, I'm satisfied with how the night, you know, like I'm not walking away, you know, where I'm jaded and just like, you know, social interactions fucking shit. I never want to do it again. You know, now you're walking away and being like, I fucking love that. I love the people. I love what we're talking about. Everything that we spoke about, it felt new. It felt interesting. It felt like, oh my God, I've never, you know, because when you get like a person or a few people who are in that same headspace, like I say, you're in a giving mentality. I'm going to give you energy. You give me your energy and trust me with it. I'm going to give you my energy. I'm going to trust you with it. You trust me and I'll trust you. And we'll build something in between us. We'll build something amazing. We'll talk about something amazing. We'll create energy for each other. You know, we'll be here for each other. We'll see each other. You know, we'll feel safe with each other. That is a different fucking ball game. Now, unfortunately, you know, through my experience with threads, a lot of people haven't found that yet, which is really unfortunate, because it's an amazing fucking feeling. I have found that with you know, like I get it, like it's not. I'm not saying that with everyone, but when you get to a point when you're comfortable unmasking in front of people, and like I said, it's still a process. So I'm not saying it's like all of a sudden you're unmasking with everyone, because that's not the case. You still mask with some people as a protection, but when you get to a point when say you meet someone 2 or 3 or 4 and you're like, oh yeah, let's bring the mask down a bit more, let's bring that, and then you get to a point where you trust them, and then you get to a point where you build a support group around you of people that do accept you fully for who you are. Like, no matter what you do, you're accepted fully, so you don't have to worry about saying the wrong thing. There is no wrong thing. Human beings are not perfect. None of us are. And if you strive for that, well, you're going to have fucking problems. So, and we're not meant to be perfect. You know what I mean? Like, everyone around us, they're individual, they're unique. That's the beauty of the world. If there was no differences, the world would be boring as fuck. If everyone was the same, what we living in here, like fucking Terminator style, like, we're not machines. I mean, we're kind of organic machines, but like I said, we're all different, we're all unique. Like, to appreciate the differences between us, because that's where the interesting stuff is created, isn't it? It's like, you have a different point of view, I have a different point of view. Let's talk about it. Even if we disagree, I'm not going to argue. I'm not here to argue. My goal is not to take your energy. I'm going to listen to what you have to say, give my point of view, and then we'll discuss, because how do you learn anything if you're always walking away from people that disagree with you, or you get pissed off at them? What's the point in that? Because, like, that means, like, if every time someone disagrees with you, you walk away, you'll never learn, like, you'll never, your opinions will always stay the same, because you're not listening to different opinions, and that's the thing. You've got, like, to have an open mind, to be curious is so, like, to be curious again is so fucking underrated. Rather than just be like, well, I know everything, so what's the point of me listening to people who I just deem inferior to myself? To be curious, to ask questions. How would you ever find the interesting stories if you don't ask any questions? How would you ever, like, how do you know if anyone's got any depth if you have no interest in talking to anyone? Like, okay, right, so like, for me, it's like 99% of people are not going to be in your life for a long time. That, and that's just something that, again, from my own experience, that's something that I've found. But in order to find that 1% or less than 1% where you are going to have interesting conversations, you still have to speak to the other 99%. So you do still have to do small talk to a certain degree. But, this is something as well that I came up with. It's a little concept I call. It's like, so it's thinking a conversation like a dance routine, right? And I call it like a 1-step, 2-step. So the majority of people that you meet are only going to do a 2-step, which is, so when I step forward, I say hello. And then they step forward, they say hello. That's just a 2-step to me, right? Or you could call it a 1-step. I'm stepping, let's just call it a 1-step. So that's a 1-step. Confuse myself then. So that's a 1-step. So I've stepped forward 1, they've stepped forward 1. Hello, hello. Right, then you've got 2-step. Hello, hello. How are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm all right. Basics. That's a 2-step, right? Then you get a 3-step, and so on and so forth, right? So the majority of people are only going to do a 1-step. Maybe I would say 80% of people do a 1-step. Another 10% probably do a 2-step, right? And again, like, it's not something I'm just making up. I've spoken. So I go around the park every single day and I regularly say hello to people, because it's something this is where I'm at now. Obviously, we talked about the isolation period. This is where I'm at now, where I'm socializing, and not every day, mind. But I'll go in there and I'll just say, morning, how you doing? Good morning, etc. Spoken to like hundreds, if not more than 1,000 people, and just been like, right, just say hello to everyone. Like I said, the majority of people will just do the 1-step or the 2-step with you. But then you get this small percentage of people who will go a bit further and they'll say something quirky to you or something different. It leaves you with an opening. I always say is like, conversation is like an invitation. If I step forward once, it's an invitation to dance. So I say, hello, and I step forward. And then you say, hello, and you step forward. And then I'll say something else, which is the second step. Then you'll say something else. And then I'll say, I won't say it, but the energy is, do you want to keep dancing? Do you want to keep dancing, or have you had enough? Because if you want to walk away, you can walk away anytime. I'm not here to make you feel uncomfortable. You have free will. You know, so if you don't want to continue this dance, you just say goodbye and you go. There's no pressure, you know, and that's the dance. Conversation is just dance. That's all it is, and that's the way that I look at it. Not everyone wants to dance. You can invite them to dance. So you know, like a girl sat down, you know, and you walk over to, would you like to dance? Now she can say no. It's the same with conversation. They can say no. They're not going to actually say no to you, but you can tell they don't want to continue on the conversation. Like, okay, no worries. You know, have a good day. You leave it in a nice way. You know what I mean? Oh, have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye. Whatever. You know, I just sometimes I just use the same sort of thing. I just say have a great day, or it's been nice talking to you. Something. You know, if we've had a bit of a conversation, I'll say that at the end of it. Oh, it's been nice chatting to you. Have a great day. And then I'll go. But yeah, like I said, conversation is like a dance. It's not so much the content, you know. So when you talk about small talk and all that sort of thing, it's not the content. Small talk is all about safety, and that's something else that I've realised is that. So this goes across neurotypicals and neurodivergents. Every single person on this planet Earth wants to feel safe, right? And small talk is their way of feeling safe, because so think about narcissists, right? Narcissists don't do the dance. What narcissists do, they step all over your feet. They're just walking towards you and you're stepping back and being like, the fuck are you doing, mate? Like, you know, just let me, you know, like, because it's not, you're not always leading. Conversation is a two-way thing. So it's like, if I step, I wait for you to step, and then, you know, I step and then you step, you know, so it's like, I go, you go, I go, you go, I go, you go. There's a flow to it, you know. When I finish, I stop, I let you talk. When you finish, you stop, you let me talk, you know, and so on and so forth. Like, that's where the safety comes from. You know, you look at, so, you know, women in general, they have a big thing with safety because, you know, men are arseholes. Not all men, but a lot of men are arseholes, and I've heard some fucking horror stories from my female mates. So, you know, a lot of men are fucking predatory and disrespectful, but for them, my whole point behind that is for women, safety is a bigger issue. For men, it's not as big an issue, but it's still an issue. I'm not saying that, you know, men can't still not feel safe because they don't, but what I'm saying is for women, it's a bigger issue. So the way to solve that is to sort of I call it the give and go, actually. So, like, for me personally, if I speak to someone, and like I said, with women, it's a bigger. So I walk past and say, hello, how are you? Oh, I'm all right, ruler. But it's a give and go. So you're not stopping. You're not trying to force the conversation. So you're just dropping it and then leave it. And just being like, I'm going to acknowledge you and say this little thing, and then I'm going to keep going. Because that's all it is. The whole point is just the acknowledgement. I acknowledge that you exist. You know, how are you? Yeah, you're good. And then I'm just going to carry on going. And like, because safety is such a big thing, so with a lot of women, which I have discovered, is they need to be the reinforcement over to build trust, and it takes women a lot longer to trust than it does men. They have to build it up over time. So if I see him again the next day, or maybe I see him again a week later, I'll say, oh, are you all right? Oh, nice to see you again. Yeah, nice to see you. Again, it's just give and go. Let it go again. I'm gone again then. You know, and then maybe you see him again 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. There's no guarantee. You don't know when you're going to see one. But my point is that at any point, you're always prepared to leave. Now, if someone wants to stay, like I said, it's the invitation. So it's like, if you want to stay and chat to me, great. You know what I mean? But it's on them. You know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to push it. You're not trying to force it. You're not trying to manufacture a conversation that doesn't exist. You know, you're not trying to be like, oh, well, I want this and I want this and I want this, so I'm just going to keep stepping and keep stepping. It's like, no, because that makes people uncomfortable. Women more so than men, but it makes anyone uncomfortable. If I keep stepping on your toes and saying, oh, yeah, but, you know, and this and this and this, and it's like, no, calm the fuck down, mate. You know, like, desperation is not attractive. And it's not even about attraction. Desperation is not safe either. You know, because what you're saying is, I want what I want more than I care about what you want or how you feel. So I'm going to do whatever I can to get what I want. And that is not safe. That is not conducive to a healthy relationship. So there's no point, like, at that point, you have to cut it off and be like, no, I'm going to lay down a boundary. You fucking stop right here because you're not draining the shit out of me. So, yeah, it's a useful way to look at conversation where I think like I don't get too disparaged with, because it is all just percentages. And I think one of the things that with autism or with maybe, I think a lot of neurodivergent people is pattern recognition. We see patterns, we see percentages, we see numbers. We love to play games. Oh, that's one thing that I forgot about, your daily routine. An hour of play a day. I dedicate an hour a day to playtime, where it's just having fun. Sorry that came to, I missed that out earlier. Just wanted to mention that because it's so important. I think every single neurodivergent person should, as much as they can, I don't like to say should actually, because should implies that, oh, you should be doing this, but you're not. So forget that I said should. It would be beneficial if every neurodivergent person dedicated an hour a day to play. I've personally found, and I've not been doing this for very long, I've personally found that dedicating an hour a day to play means that I just feel so much better within myself. Like I just feel, to feed like the inner child, you know what I mean? Like I just feel so much better within myself. So yeah, I think it's really beneficial. But yeah, I'm just looking at the time now. I don't know how long I wanted this thing to be, but I'm at 51 minutes. And I might just leave it there, and just think, because I've covered a lot in there, and yeah, I had no idea what I was going to say, but yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with what I've put in there. I hope there isn't too much background noise. Because it's one of the things that I'm conscious of is that, as neurodivergents, we like it to be clear, don't we? And we don't like there to be like too much like like extra sounds. I don't want it to be like sensory overload or anything like that. So I hope that's okay for everyone. Or for even just the one person that listens to this, or maybe no people listen to it, but maybe it's just for me. But if that's the case, I'm okay with that. It's the same when I leave voice notes on Threads. It's like if they don't listen to it, I'm okay with it. I'm not doing it because I have an expectation of the results. And that's one of the things that I've learned as well, is letting go of expectations. I don't always achieve it, bear in mind. But it's something I try to do, something sometimes I do achieve, which is if you go in there with expectations of an outcome, like if that outcome isn't achieved, disappointment follows. So you create your own disappointment in that way. So I have no idea how this will be received or if anyone will even actually listen to it. But I wanted to put this out there just to see, and yeah, I felt called to do it, and that's all I can do really. I can only do what I feel like I'm meant to do, and that's what I've done. So if anyone has listened to this out there, I'm really grateful, really thankful that you have. I hope that some of this, if possible, resonated with you, or I don't know, maybe you learned something for this, or maybe just enjoyed listening to it, or whatever it did for you. I hope it did something beneficial. Language is so important as well. Languages are so, like, the words that we use, so important, and I have to catch myself. I talk about consciously catching the loops, and a lot of the time we can do things that are in autopilot and we don't catch them. Like using words like should, and I don't like that word, because I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm not trying to push anyone to do anything in particular. I'm just telling a story. I'm just telling the story from my experience, and I don't want anyone to think that, they're not doing well enough, or that they should be where, in this certain place or whatever. You are exactly where you're meant to be. Wherever you are on the journey right now is okay. Wherever you are, it doesn't matter. Like, I've been in some fucking shit places, mate. Trust me, I've been fucking zoned out my head. on weed and mushrooms and off in different fucking dimensions, you know what I mean? Like I've gone through some horrible shit in my life, but trust me, even if you're going through horrible shit, you've survived, you're still here, you know what I mean? Like, just because if you are in one of those difficult places doesn't mean that you always will be. That old saying about even this shall pass. I've been in so many different situations in my life, some great, amazing moments and some horrible moments that I've really struggled with. But every single one of them I've come through, and life has improved. And that's the thing, we don't know the future. Anyone that tries to say they know what will happen in the future is full of shit. Why are they full of shit? Because if you did, you would bet on it and you'd be a fucking billionaire. So you don't know the future. We try to tell ourselves that we know the future based on how we feel now. So if you say, oh, I'm just meant to be alone. It's like, how the fuck do you know that? Like, do you see your life mapped out? Like, do you know the next 30, 40 years? Like, no, you don't know. It's based on a feeling. We create narratives based on how we feel. And a lot of the time, that can include the future, but it's bullshit. It's bullshit. We don't know the future. We don't know what's going to happen. You can tell yourself, I don't know how good life is going to get. You know what I mean? Because we don't. I could never have imagined my life would be the way it is now a year ago. Because I was in a completely different space. I was in the throes of addiction. I would never have. I tried to get sober, but I failed several times, you know what I mean? So, back then it just looked like I was doomed to forever, like sort of use that as my crutch. I was forever sort of stuck to coping mechanisms. I never really imagined where I would be now. So, yeah, it's never as bad as it seems, even though sometimes it can be terrible. I know that myself. But yeah, just remember, no matter what's going on, you're doing great. You know what I mean? You listen to this podcast, which means if you are listening to this podcast, that means that you're looking into things, I suppose you could say, maybe searching for something, searching for a feeling, searching for something other than where you are now. If that's even the right word, but you're sort of like pushing yourself intellectually, you know what I mean? Like you must have gone on to there and be like, oh, let's look at all this, let's find something more about myself. Let's go deeper. And that's one of the best things that you can do, is to seek to understand yourself on a deeper level, because all of the best things that have happened to me have come from understanding myself on a deeper level. And the deeper you understand yourself, the more you understand other people, and life gets easier, because then you stop saying, I don't understand why. Then you think, I know why. I just need to process the emotion, that's all. Life does get easier. Excuse me, it's not always hard. I'm not saying there are not hard moments, but the hard moments become less. You're not in a constant suffering self-destruction cycle, where you're going through hell every single day. And that is some people's lives. You can get out of that. You can get out of the cycle. Cycles can be broken. So, you can find peace. You can find satisfaction, relaxation, safety. It's achievable. Anything is achievable with hard work. So, like I said, I hope you enjoy the podcast. I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate anyone that has listened. I hope this has turned out well. And I